Good morning. Happy Wednesday to you. Well, I just can't help but thinking we live in some very strange times. All right, I'm hanging out with my cat this morning. She's being her usual self looking out the window. But anyway, here in the Commonwealth, we just had an election just a week ago, and the Democrats won. Our governor elect is going to be Abigail Spanberger. Our lieutenant governor elect is Ghazala Hashmi. And our attorney general elect is a man named Jay Jones. They won, which is not surprising because we live in a blue state. I honestly thought that Jay Jones is going to lose to Jason Miyares, his Republican. Miyares is the incumbent, but he lost to Jones, which really surprised me. As you all know, Jones was the one who had the scandal about sending the text messages, wishing he could put two bullets in the head of Scott Gilbert, the former Republican Speaker of the House of Delegates, and said that the mother or his wife should hold their dying children in her arms because they were little fascists. Because Scott Gilbert didn't vote with Jay Jones when he was a delegate on draconian gun laws. Of course, this whole thing that more gun control laws are going to lower crime is just nothing short of idiotic. It just fails the common sense test just about everywhere you look. But I thought, should Virginia gun owners be leery? What happens in 2026? Well, as we all know, back in 2017, Ralph Northam, otherwise known as Blackface, if you're a Virginian, you'll know what that refers to. But Governor Northam had, really, really seriously strong anti-gun laws that were passed in 2019 into 2020. And they went into effect July 1st of 2020. One of the most insidious ones was a ban on private sales. In other words, you can't sell a gun to your neighbor, a buddy at work, or even somebody else in your family, a relative, for instance. This is tea, by the way, no alcohol. But you couldn't sell a firearm to somebody without both of you going down to an FFL dealer and going through a background check. This was under the guise of stopping criminals from getting guns. But criminals don't buy their guns at gun shows. They don't buy their guns legally. They acquire them through a straw purchase using somebody who could pass a background check. They buy them on the black market, they trade them for drugs, or they just steal them. So recently in Virginia, a state, I believe he was the State Court of Appeals judge, said that the ban on private sales is unconstitutional. So he enjoined that. So basically, as of about a week ago, private sales are now legal again. So if I wanted to sell a firearm to my next door neighbor, and, of course, I know he's not a felon, sure. It's still illegal to knowingly sell a firearm to a felon. That doesn't change. And it doesn't change that it's illegal for a felon to have a gun. But I think back to Project Exile in the late 1990s, that's what worked. That's the legislation we should be going for. But the Democrats don't see it that way. They would rather punish law-abiding and peaceful citizens to make, I guess, in their mind, they think that's going to reduce crime. Well, you know what? You don't make the sheep any safer by getting rid of the sheepdogs, because it only emboldens the wolves. But I thought of a couple things that are probably going to be resurrected in 2026. Now, the General Assembly and the new governor will be seated or I guess you can say the governor will be inaugurated and the General Assembly will be seated. Now, right now, we will have a 64-36 Democrat majority in the House of Delegates, and most of those Democrats are pretty far left in the House of Delegates come January. The state Senate did not have an election this year. They're all up in 2027. There are 40 of them. And right now it's 21-19 Democrat majority. And with a governor-elect Spamberger, she's going to sign all those anti-gun bills in that Glenn Youngkin thankfully vetoed. So Glenn Youngkin is on his way out. He couldn't succeed himself for another term. In Virginia, you can only be governor one time. Then you have to sit out for 4 years, and then you can run again. But right now they had a one gun a month law in the early 90s. It was supposed to prevent gun running because people were allegedly buying firearms in Virginia, trafficking them to New York, which is already highly illegal. But nevertheless, it was to stop gun running. And then the law was eventually repealed. Under, I believe it was Ralph Northam, they put the law back, but they had a carve out with it. You can only buy one gun every 30 days unless you have a concealed carry permit. Then that limit doesn't apply. Now, one gun a month, that doesn't sound unreasonable. The problem with that is, well, if they make it one gun a month, why not one gun every 3 months? One gun every 6 months? One gun every year? In my whole life, if I average how old I am, I've probably bought one gun every 10 years. Okay? But it's the principle of the thing. But I have a concealed carry permit, but I've never had the desire to buy more than one gun a month. But again, it's not about the desire or the fact that whether you want to or not, it's just another thing where they chip away at your rights. The banning private sales, fortunately, the judge has enjoined that, so that's no longer the case. But they're going to probably try and find some way to bring that back, that you can't have private sales. Another tactic they're going to use is, Democrats hate gun shows. And one of the things that they've tried to push into law, and it never made it out of committee, but they were going to have a 5-day waiting period when you buy a firearm, which would basically put gun shows out of business. But the thing is, it's unnecessary. It's irrelevant. In Virginia, when you go to buy a firearm, you fill out that form 4473. They run your name through the FBI, the NCIC, and the state police databases, and the VCIN, Virginia Criminal Information Network. They run your name through that. It takes about 20 minutes, and you get your firearm. There's that 5-day waiting period. There's no need for that, especially if somebody is threatened to be a victim of violent crime. Let's say a woman has a domestic violence order against her ex-boyfriend or ex-husband, and he's like, I'm going to kill you when I see you. And, she's like, I need to defend myself now. And you're going to tell her she has to wait 5 days or 30 days. That could cause somebody to die. Another thing they're going to try and bring back is what we call the restaurant ban. Many years ago, it was legal to carry a concealed firearm with a permit into Taco Bell or McDonald's or Burger King or someplace like that, but it was against the law for you to carry concealed in Applebee's or Ruby Tuesdays or Chili's because they sold alcohol. So you couldn't carry concealed into any place with an on-premise license. They tried to get rid of the ban when Tim Kaine was governor, and his excuse was, well, I'm going to veto the repeal of that because guns and alcohol don't mix. But it's illegal to consume alcohol if you're carrying concealed with a permit. So if you're at Taco Bell, you're okay. But if you're at Applebee's, you're not. If you're not drinking and you're carrying concealed, what does the alcohol have to do with anything? Anyway, they repealed it under Bob McDonnell. One of the 3 things he did that I really liked, he reopened the rest areas that Tim Kaine closed. He raised the speed limit to 70 miles an hour from 65, and he signed the repeal of the restaurant ban into law. So think what you want of Governor Bob McDonnell. He did those 3 good things. But anyway, the Democrats, of course, are trying to bring it back. It's a solution in search of a problem. so far, there's not been any case I know of in Virginia where an armed person with a concealed carry permit went into a bar and shot and killed the bartender. It's just not a problem because the people who have the permits generally are more law abiding than just about anybody, including the police. They're going to bring back what they erroneously call an assault weapons ban. Now, the problem is, what is an assault weapon? Go to any Democrat you know and say, tell me what an assault weapon is, or an assault rifle. They'll say, well, it's an AR-15 assault rifle. Well, AR stands for Armalite rifle. An AR-15 is not a true assault rifle. It looks like one. It smells like one. It feels like one. Cosmetically, it looks like one, but it's not. It's semi-automatic only. One shot per trigger pull. It's just like a Glock semi-automatic pistol. Bam, bam, bam. It's not like a machine gun. Real assault weapons are technically illegal to own for private citizens unless you spend thousands upon thousands of dollars and go through a lot of red tape, get your tax stamp and your BATF approval, notify your sheriff, go through another extra background investigation. Those things are covered under the National Firearms Act. So I don't even think you can own a machine gun that was built after 1986. Only the government has that right. So they're going to make the definition of assault weapon so wide that it covers things that are even worse than the 1993 Bill Clinton bill. It used to be that an AR-15 was considered an assault rifle and you couldn't own one. But a Ruger Mini 14, which fires the same round, takes the same magazine, has the same ballistics and the same range, but it doesn't have the pistol grip, the bayonet lug, the flash suppressor, and the collapsible stock. So a Ruger Mini 14 was okay. The Democrats are going to try and tighten that up so that they will consider that to be an assault weapon, even though it's not. But nevertheless, they're going to try and bring that back under the law that Northam wanted, which thankfully never got passed. Anything that accepts a detachable magazine with more than 10 rounds capacity would be considered an assault weapon. So that means even if you had a Ruger Mini 14 or an AR-15 and you only had a tiny 10-round magazine, that would still be considered an assault rifle because it's capable of accepting a magazine greater than 10 rounds. Well, to tell you the truth, that would make every semi-automatic firearm that has the ability to accept a detachable magazine as an assault weapon. So your Glock 19, banned. Your Glock 21, banned. Your Glock 17, banned. Because they all are capable of accepting a magazine with more than 10 rounds. That would have made Virginia's gun laws worse than California. In California, you can own certain semi-automatic pistols if you have a magazine with a pin in it that only allows 10 rounds. But this would make our gun laws worse than California. Another thing was with the high-capacity magazines. The Democrats were saying that any magazine that held more than 10 rounds is high capacity, which is total bovine fecal matter. The standard magazine for a Colt M1911 holds 7 or 8 rounds. So if you had a 10-round magazine, it would stick down that far beyond the magazine well. That would be high capacity. But it depends on the caliber and type of weapon. A Glock 19, the standard magazine, is 15 rounds. So that's standard capacity, not high capacity. Now, if you have one of those really long 30-round extended mags that sticks way down, yes, that would be high capacity. But you have to be aware if you ever have a Glock like that, it makes the firearm very heavy, very unwieldy. It makes it unbalanced. And the stronger spring in those big magazines means it's more likely to jam. So, that stuff looks good in gangster rap videos. It looks cool in movies and on video games, but you really don't want that kind of magazine on a standard Glock. It's going to ruin your accuracy and everything else. But anyway, with the AR, the Democrats want you to be limited to a 10-round magazine. Well, if you've ever seen a 10-round magazine with an AR, it sticks down about half an inch beyond the bottom of the magazine well. It's almost hard to grab it when you eject it. A 20-round or a 30-round magazine is standard for an AR. Now, if you put a big 100 round drum magazine on there, that would be high capacity. And then again, you have the problem with firearm being unwieldy and all that. So that's sort of another thing. And how would they enforce a so-called assault rifle ban or assault weapons ban if they said you can't own this gun if it was made after July of 2026? Firearms don't have a date of manufacture stamped on them. They just have a serial number. Magazines are not serialized. So how can they say, well, if you own it before this date, you can have it? Well, how's a police officer, if you encounter one, how's he going to know when you got that weapon and when it was manufactured? He's going to have a serial number. He can check if it's stolen. But, if it were daylight hours, he could call the manufacturer. They could probably get that information. But then they're going to say, well, the firearms dealer they sold it to. Then they've got to call that dealer and say, when was this gun sold? And they're not going to be able to have the resources to do that on the side of the road. So you're going to run the risk of, possibly an unlawful detention or a seizure of property that's unwarranted. So that can be a problem. Another thing that they wanted to do was bring back grandfathering, where, well, if you have this weapon, you can register it and you get to keep it for the rest of your life. But when you die, your kids can't have it. Your grandkids can't have it. That basically means you're getting some liberty, but you're trading away your descendants. You're trading away the liberty of your descendants. Many times they might not even be legal adults yet. So, I'm a father of, my son is grown. I have 2 stepdaughters who are grown, and I have a grandson who's, just a little over a year old. So he's obviously, I want him to have the same rights I had by the time he's an adult. I don't want that. It's not my place. I can't take that right away from him. That'd be like saying, well, you can have whatever freedom of religion you want, but the religion is not going to apply. Your grandchildren, your children and grandchildren won't be able to exercise the same faith. And that's a huge, huge problem. Another thing that they have up their sleeves, they're going to try and come up with a safe storage law, where you can be charged if you have minor. The way the law was written, it was kind of vague, but if you had a minor child in the house, you had to have the weapon locked up. Well, what if my son has a gun in his house and he's got a son who's a year old? Okay, that's a minor. Does he have to keep his firearm in a safe with the ammunition separate and all that? Probably not. If you have 10 or 11-year-old kids in the house, yeah. But do you really need a law to do that? That's what we used to call common sense. And there are already other statutes that deal with, reckless handling of a firearm, letting a minor have it and this and that. We already have existing law to deal with that. You also have the enforceability issue. Do you have police doing random checks of people? Well, there goes the Fourth Amendment. These things have a way of creeping. It's like creeping tyranny. It encroaches on you slowly. Another thing that they're going to go after is state reciprocity. As it is now with a Virginia carry permit, you can carry in probably 33, 34 states, something like that. There is recognition and reciprocity. Reciprocity is where, like Virginia and Pennsylvania, your permit in Virginia is valid in Pennsylvania. Your Pennsylvania permit is valid in Virginia. There's other states that recognize it. Like, I believe Virginia recognizes a permit from D.C., but D.C. does not recognize a permit from Virginia. So they have no reciprocity. And these laws do change a lot. Some states only honor in-state resident concealed permits. They don't honor non-resident permits. Other states have permitless carry where you don't have to have a permit at all. But then some of them have restrictions on whether you can carry it openly or concealed. There's a lot of things. You can't just take your firearm with you and drive across state lines and automatically assume you're going to be good. That's something you need to check in before you go into other states. If you have a Virginia permit, you're obviously good in Kentucky, West Virginia, and Tennessee because they have permitless carry. You're soon going to have permitless carry in North Carolina, from what I understand, the legislature is going to override the veto of Democrat Governor Roy Cooper. I'm not sure about that, but I have read that they're going to override it. And then North Carolina will be the 30th state out of 50 that has a provision of permitless carry. I don't want to make the mistake of calling it constitutional carry because there is still a lot of stipulations on it. There's a lot of places that are gun-free zones, unsecured gun-free zones. If you had true constitutional carry, that would mean you could carry anywhere that wasn't a secure facility like an airport terminal or a police station, a jail, a courthouse, a prison, etc. You wouldn't have, you wouldn't have a situation where you would violate the law by carrying a gun in a shopping center. So it's permitless carry, not constitutional carry. You could also choose whether you can carry openly or concealed. I advise against openly carrying. I know some people like it. I have nothing against it, but I just think you're going to draw unwanted attention to yourself. You're going to give up a tactical advantage. If you're carrying just discretion is the better part of valor, carry it concealed. The Democrats are going to try and come up with a red flag law, which means basically you can lose your firearms without due process. Now, they will call it due process, but what will often happen is, let's say a guy sees an NRA flag on your flying outside your house. You've got the Gadsden flag, don't tread on me. You've got your, your pickup truck with your, American flag sticker. And, maybe you got a Trump sticker on the back of it. I don't know. You look like a deplorable, and your neighbor might argue with you about something. And, he even on social media, somebody will argue, and then they'll call the police and say that you're a threat. Well, they'll make up a story that maybe you were in your yard waving your gun around when you really weren't. Let's say you came back from the range and you were taking your firearms out of your truck. Let's say you set one on the hood while you're getting your range bag out. Somebody will say that, oh, he had his gun on his hood aimed at my house, and people will make stuff up, okay? They will do it. They will lie, and what will happen is they will, stretch the truth. They'll say it to a judge, or they will, say it to the police, and they'll get law enforcement to, petition for you to have your rights taken away. Well, then the police show up at your door, take your guns. The problem is they'll say, well, judge has the ability to reject it. But what judge? The judge is going to err on the side of protecting his butt, not on the side of protecting the Constitution. The judge doesn't want, let's suppose the judge denies the what do they call it? The emergency extreme risk protective order, or just call it a red flag law. The terminology is going to vary by state, but he's not going to want to deny that because what if he denies it and then you go out and shoot some kids at school or something? Well, then that's going to reflect negatively on the judge. Well, he doesn't want that. He's going to throw you under the bus and grant the order. And next thing you know, the cops are showing up at your door demanding your guns, even though you didn't do anything. Okay? And even if you may have said something on Facebook or other social media that was kind of extreme, that doesn't really mean it's not a threat. It's not a direct threat. I mean, I've had people say all kinds of really mean stuff, and it's like, well, just because you shouldn't do something, it doesn't mean you can't, and it doesn't mean you won't. But most people are just like keyboard warriors. They're going to say this and that, and they're not going to do anything. But suppose, you have a situation where somebody is deemed dangerous. Well, every state, every jurisdiction in the country has some form of temporary detention order or an emergency custody order, a TDO or an ECO, where if somebody is really, truly dangerous, you remove the dangerous person. You don't try and remove the instrument. Suppose you have a red flag order against a guy. Let's say maybe the guy's a little out there, he's a little antisocial, but he hasn't hurt anybody, he doesn't have a criminal record. The police go and they think they get all of his guns. He says, yeah, I got a revolver here and I got a rifle here, and they take it. Well, he could have other guns somewhere else in the house, but now you've got this guy, the police came, humiliated him in front of his neighbors. Now he's sitting there fuming mad. Now is when he's probably going to do something that will get him in trouble. And if he doesn't do anything, he still now has to fight to get his rights back. So people supporting red flag laws need to be very, very careful about that. It's, you know, you can, that can come back to bite you. I think if somebody does trying to get a red flag order against somebody, that there should be a criminal sanction for them if it turns out that it's unwarranted or false or based upon questionable testimony. That person who called for that should be on the line, and I think law enforcement should be subject to sanction if they do it based upon false information or weak information. When you're dealing with people's rights, you need to tread very lightly. Another thing that we have in Virginia that was passed was McAuliffe did it by executive order when he was governor. No guns in ABC stores. Okay, he just had a no gun. He had to put up the no gun sticker on every ABC store. That was never passed. That was never a law. That was an executive order. I was wondering if anybody would ever be a test case for that. Let some really rich guy get arrested and then sue and win in the state court, because that was never a law. It was an executive order. Another one was banning guns in rest areas. Why? What's the purpose of that? Do we have problems with people who have carry permits robbing liquor stores? Do we have problems with people with carry permits shooting up rest areas? No. These are all just things that sound good, but it's a solution in search of a problem. I go back to the state reciprocity. There's not a problem with people from Virginia with a permit driving into Pennsylvania and robbing banks. We don't have people from Ohio with carry permits coming into Virginia and murdering people. It's just, it doesn't happen. What's the problem with the reciprocity? If we followed the Constitution, Article 4, Section 1, pretty much we'd already have nationwide reciprocity, because a concealed carry permit is a judicial proceeding, and each state is required to honor the warrants, acts, writs, and judicial acts of other states. Meaning, my wife and I are married in Virginia. If we go to live in Nevada, we don't have to get married when we're there. We're married. All states recognize it wherever we go. Why isn't a gun permit the same way? Just let's be consistent. Another thing they're going to try and do is put a restriction on ammunition sales. California does something like that, where you actually have to show ID to buy ammunition. You're turning a right into a privilege. That's like saying, well, you can own a car, but we're going to limit you on being able to buy gasoline, or, well, it's against the law to buy new tires. They sort of skirt around what's an infringement. But some of the laws that are being proposed, they are going to use a death by 1,000 cut strategy. Now, if they pass laws that certain types of weapons, let's say semi-automatic weapons that have a detachable magazine and are capable of detaching or accepting a detachable magazine with more than 10 rounds, that's probably 90% of semi-automatic firearms made today. You're going to make 2 million Virginians an instant felon overnight. Now, do I think that the police are going to start door-to-door confiscations? I don't see that happening. I see what they're going to do is you're going to make it so gun owners are too scared to leave the house with their firearms. So, like, let's say just say somebody has an AK-47, okay? A 7.62 by 39 millimeter round AK-47 or an SKS or something like that, and it's now deemed an assault weapon. It's illegal. For you to even drive to the police station to turn it in, you'd be committing a felony. Are they going to send the sheriff out to get you? No. But what will happen is, what happens if you want to go to the range? Okay. You might get stopped by the police on the way, and then you got a problem. If you go to the range, are the people at the range going to be looking out and turning you in? I don't think too many people who own a range would want to do that. But are there going to be undercover ATF agents and state troopers in the range saying, hey, look at the magazine that guy has? Are the agents of the government going to say, hey, let's look at your security camera footage, which every pistol range has it. Look at the camera, see who came in, and maybe take a view. What's that guy's license plate? Let's check it out. They put that license plate in there and maybe go pay you a visit. I'm not saying it's going to happen like that, but it's possible. So the Democrats will have achieved a symbolic victory. They didn't have to confiscate anybody's guns. They've just made it so that gun owners are afraid to exercise their right. So you have a valid carry permit. If you own a Glock or something like that, now that firearm's illegal. What are you going to do? You don't want any trouble with the police. You can carry a revolver. I love revolvers. I have 3 revolvers. I love them dearly. They're great. I prefer a revolver, actually. I really, really like revolvers. They're nice and simple. They really don't jam. You don't have to fumble with a magazine. You can fire them with one hand. But nevertheless, if enough sheriffs get up and say, hey, we're not going to enforce that, it's unconstitutional, there's not a lot the governor can actually do. But I could see a situation where, the state police could be ordered to maybe look into things. But, they're complaining now they don't have enough people to patrol the highways. State troopers, they're supposed to be out on the highway. I know they do other things besides traffic, but in Virginia, they're mainly a highway patrol. Individual sheriffs are probably not going to be too keen on enforcing it. In my county where I live, we have 5 or 6 deputies on a shift. That's a full contingent, and they cover more than 500 square miles. They don't have time to go looking door to door, and I don't think our sheriff would go for something like that. I don't know if this is a sanctuary county or not. I didn't move here until about a year ago, after the election in 2024. But there's a way you can have a law, but how do you enforce it? How much manpower are you going to devote to it? And the sad thing is, you're going to have no effort made towards real criminals. Jay Jones is like part of the Hug-a-Thug crowd, and he's now going to be the top cop in Virginia. So in his mind, somebody who lives out in the country who happens to get caught with an illegal Glock or an illegal AR is more of a menace to society, even though they've never hurt anybody or threatened anybody, than some punk who lives down in the city who's actually used a firearm to commit multiple felonies. He doesn't see that person as being dangerous. He sees that person as a victim. He sees the guy who lives way out in the boondocks with an AR as the real problem. It's crazy. But anyway, that's enough for that. I gotta go. Have a great day.